Good afternoon.
Morning.
This is Jimmy Two-Time. I'm Double AP. This is another sad episode of Yinzology.
The study of everything Pittsburgh. As you know, it's sad because
We were going to do a 50th
of the Immaculate Reception.
until we all got the news.
That he is no longer with us. He's up there in heaven with Myron. Myron can actually finally talk about the Immaculate Reception with Franco because
As he's getting the Immaculate Reception into heaven,
That
and we
is
just
correct.
can't believe it. Just like you at home, we can't believe it.
he was the one that was able to turn the franchise around, turn the Steelers franchise around, and get the fans revved up and, renewed hope with the Steelers. You didn't win before. We didn't win before Franco came, and there were some dark days, down years after Franco retired. That last year he went to Seattle. Whenever he went to Seattle, the Steelers had
last year.
10 years, 15 years or so of some pretty difficult times. So
Yeah.
he was the one that was able to turn that franchise around.
Yeah, if you're not from Pittsburgh, you just don't understand. The Steelers were the laughing joke of the NFL until Franco showed up. He kind of broke the curse because before you had Franco, we were not winning, and you had the Nick Shriner years was not pretty at all. And so when we had Franco, it was just unbelievable. It was the miracle of miracles, that Immaculate Reception.
This episode is not only dedicated to the Immaculate Reception, but also dedicated to his life.
Yeah.
And as we kind of mourn the loss of him and kind of come to grips with what happened.
Now, what's amazing is most people don't know he came from Jersey, but his folks, African American father and Italian mother, so that made him have been the first African American MVP and first Italian American MVP. One of 9 children. He
There
had
you go.
9. That's
Probably why he was fast.
That's a big family.
Yeah. Super humble guy as well.
Yeah.
Never wanted to really look at himself as a professional athlete. Always took the time to talk to the fans. Always took the time to get pictures taken.
Staggerwalt said humbly, what he liked about Franco is that he never celebrated, a touchdown. He never had the touchdown football celebration dance.
No, scored and then gave the ball to the ref, and you got to look like you've been there before. Scores touchdowns, gives the ball to the ref. Runs off the field, gets to the sidelines, gets behind the bench, does a little bit of celebration, obviously, but no showboatsmanship
no
or
posing
anything.
for the picture, none of that.
Grew up, went to Penn State, and was drafted in 1972 to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers. One of the integral pieces, we already had Mean Joe Green. But he came.
But they're getting Franco. That's when we got rid of. We're wondering why we didn't pick up Johnny Unitas from the Berg.
Yeah.
And then there was another guy from East Ohio. Like, why didn't we pick him up? Like, what are we doing? And here we go again. And who's this Franco from the Nittany
Lions? Where did this guy come from?
What are we doing?
But he came, and by the time he retired, he had. Not too many people know this. He had the 3rd most rushing yards in the NFL all time by the time he retired.
And he's still, I think, number 15 all time.
Yeah. And I think to this day, he's actually still has the most rushing yards in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. I think in the Super Bowls, not in the playoffs, but he has the most rushing yards in the Super Bowl. 2 guys is Tony Stagno and Al Vento owned a pizza shop. And they were going to games all the time.
Yeah.
And over again, season ticket holders, and there was absolutely no enthusiasm in the stands.
No.
So they figured, hey, this guy's Italian. He's half Italian. Let's try to name Franco's Italian Army.
Yeah.
Just like the shirt states. So they went ahead and they asked Franco. They said, hey, can you give us your good graces so we can kind of get things going? Franco said, yeah, you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
So they started. And by the time the playoffs came around and towards the end of the regular season, they had 80 strong.
It was national.
Yeah, they were marching into the stands, into the stadium. They had a cadence going. They had a drum corps going in the front, march in. They all had the helmets on. They all had Franco's Italian Army on. They made Myron Cope one of the first lieutenants of Franco's Italian Army.
And they brought in Italian celebrities. They eventually got who into the Italian Army. Who did they get?
They got Frank Sinatra.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
They were sipping some wine on a. They actually met him
out in California
to make it official. Do you know that story?
Yeah, they well, what they would do is they would come in and
he almost didn't show up.
He almost didn't show up. They come in and they said, "Hey, we got to figure out how we can get Sinatra because we're going out to California to play the playoffs."
And they're already there and they're waiting on him.
Yeah, they're waiting on him. And
up?
Myron said he was going to see if he could help out.
Yeah.
And they're waiting for an hour or so, and all of a sudden Sinatra comes in and
showed up.
And he said something on the lines of, "What, you never thought I'd show up? I show up for everything."
Yeah.
Went over and they gave him a kiss on the cheek, and I went ahead and broke some bread and drank some wine with them and talked to him for a little while, and that's how the story goes.
There you go.
But they would smuggle wine into the stadium. They would hollow out loaves of bread, and they'd smuggle wine in. They had a couple seats that they bought at Three River Stadium just for the food. It was the mess hall in those two seats, so it was like a legit thing. And Franco definitely enjoyed it.
And what were the other two? There was Franco's Italian Army,
Girella's Gorillas, Lambert's Lunatics, up into whenever Franco passed. Every time he would be outside of Pittsburgh, where Alvento and Tony Stagno had the pizza place, Vento's Pizza. They would always invite Franco in, and they'd sit down and they'd order a pizza, and they'd have a pizza together and talk about old times. So it was dwindling because they were getting a little older, but it was more of a fraternity of people, if you will.
You didn't make a lot of money back in the 70s playing football. You just didn't make a lot of money. And he was asking for a bit of a pay raise, and the Rooneys dragged their feet, and they didn't meet him. They had a falling out. But they reunited after he retired, and he came back, and he just loved Pittsburgh. He came back to Pittsburgh and just really, like you said, he was humble. He just would graciously, we lost count of how many interviews he had about the Immaculate Reception. And then it all started coming back because of the 50th anniversary. He was still doing interviews up until just a few days ago.
Yeah. The most iconic play in the history of all professional sports, and he was just a laid-back guy.
He was fast, he was agile, and he was a hard worker because you didn't make a lot of money. He had to start his own business. Jim, he started a bakery. It's still up and running, the Super Bakery, the Super Donuts. Marketing these donuts as nutritional, having more vitamins and minerals rather than going to Dunkin' Donuts where it was just all out, just a sugar donut.
Yeah, straight up.
He was trying to come up with like a nutritional type savory or sweet donut. So, but he started from the ground up. He would travel miles and miles to meet up with marketers and supermarkets and trying to get customers. And then people saw him unloading and loading the trucks out on the docks like. He was working it. He was working.
Yeah.
People were like,
just like he was in training camp. He was working to try to get things better.
And that's who he was. Just a hard working. He never stopped working after he retired.
No. But in 1972, December 23rd, and you'll hear about it on TV here for the next week or so. But December 23rd, Three River Stadium, one of the iconic places. 4 Super Bowls. The Pirates were winning. There as well.
The Yingers of that time, that day, they all kind of like JFK. They all know where they were. They all remember that moment. They can tell you where they were. They can tell you like it was yesterday.
Now think back, 1972, 50,327 people. Now that would be considered small for college football size.
Small potatoes.
But that's Three River Stadium. That's how many people were there. The other thing, Fred Swearingen was the referee, and that's a big component of what's going on because they didn't have instant replay back then.
Right.
And
it happened so fast.
Well, with the rules also.
Yeah.
Whenever Bradshaw threw the ball, if it would have hit, guy's named John Frenchie Fuqua, one of my favorite nicknames of all, Frenchie Fuqua.
It would have been.
If it would have hit Frenchie or hit the ground, it would have been incomplete.
Dead play.
Yeah, but it hit Tatum. And Franco, they interviewed him, and Franco said, I was just going on a little shallow cross.
Yeah.
And I turned, and here's a ball coming right to me. He
Yeah.
said he picked it up off the ground, or kind of before it hit the ground, and started rumbling down the left sidelines.
Yeah.
And he had to go ahead and he had to stiff arm a guy.
Yep.
And this guy is infamous as well. Guy's named Jimmy Warren. He had to stiff arm him at the 10-yard line because that was the last line of defense for the Oakland Raiders to try to stop him. John Madden probably was going nuts on the sidelines.
Oh yeah, and Franco talks about in his mind he could hear Joe from Penn State saying, go for the ball. And then when he goes for the ball, he doesn't remember visually getting the ball, but he remembers the vision comes back when he's stiff-arming him. He's like, go for the touchdown. That's what was going through his head as he's stiff-arming.
Yeah. So Myron Cope, iconic with the Pittsburgh Steelers, wasn't even able to see the game. He kind of gave in.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm going to go down and I'm
gave
going to
up.
get ready for the locker room. He's in the elevator on the way down.
When it all...
Someone had to tell him what happened. He had no idea what happened. But a lady called in to the 11 o'clock news beforehand and told Myron, a lady named Sharon Levosky, told Myron, she said, that was such an amazing play.
Yeah.
In my mind, that was the immaculate reception. And Myron heard that lady say that one time before he went on the air, and he said it on the air, that 11 o'clock news. She's the one that came up with the name.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he said it, she told him once, Myron said it once on the air at the 11 o'clock news, the sports segment, and ever since then it stuck,
Yeah.
and away we go. Once they imploded the stadium, and they built Heinz Field on one side, and they built PNC Park on the other side, in the middle, and you go to a tour in the middle of the parking lot,
Yeah.
they have where that pylon is, where he crossed the goal line, they still have a little flag there to kind of tell people whenever they come up, and people always stop. You see people all the time. They stop in the parking lot right at that point. They take a picture. People are kind of their foot on that little goalpost on the pylon, and that's that'll be there forever.
You can also get your picture taken with Franco's life-size replica at the International Airport at Pittsburgh when you land there. And I think there's also still one at the History Center. I'm not sure, or if that was the one they moved to the airport. But regardless, it's at the airport. You gotta get your picture Francoing with Franco. So
Yeah. Remember, left foot though. Left foot's down,
Yeah.
right foot's up, and you got to catch it as you're looking up.
Yeah.
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 In true old school Pittsburgh Steeler football fashion, it's going to be wind chill of -15, -18 degrees.
I'm sure it's gonna be. They're gonna retire the number.
They're gonna retire the number.
It's gonna be a big ceremony.
Yeah.
Type,
But it's going to be cold, but I would imagine it's probably going to be a packed house because you can't keep Steeler fans away. We're all mourning, and one of my childhood favorite players growing up. So
we'd like to do a moment of silence.
yes.
And I'm a dude.
And I'm a dude.
I'm a dad.
And I'm a dad.
And we're doodads.
And we're out.